What's up, guys? Now, if you haven't seen Star Wars The Last Jedi yet, I highly recommend that you don't watch this video. You watch my non-spoiler review. Once you see the film, come back and watch this video. It's my full spoiler review. I am telling you every bit of spoilerific thing. Well, maybe not everything, because there's so much that happens in this movie. But I am going to talk about everything that I feel as though I should talk about, and that's the most important to the plot and to the story. I wrote a little bit of notes here, just so I don't forget anything, because there is so much. And the first thing I wrote down, the first thing I want to talk about, or the first thing I just want to mention, is something that I had no idea when I watched the film. I've seen it 3 times now, and I'm going to be seeing it more. And every time, in the beginning of the movie, when we have the Poe Dameron's X-Wing coming up, and before he even talks to Hux, with the kind of comedic humor there, which I liked. I thought it all worked. I enjoyed it. But before there's that dialogue, we hear BB-8 going like, you know, he's doing his noises, and Poe responds to him saying something. I'm not entirely sure what he responds. And then Leia says, "I agree with the droid on this one," or something along the lines of that. What it turns out the droid says is, "I have a bad feeling about this," which is the line that recurs in every single Star Wars movie, only in this one it was said by a droid who doesn't speak the English language. I personally love that, because the first time I watched it, I said, that line, it's not in the movie. Did Rian Johnson completely forget about it? And it turns out he didn't forget about it, but he added it into the movie in such an interesting way. And after, I just read this morning. I had no idea, and I just read this morning. And I was just like, oh wow, that really works, and I really dig that, and I think it's so original and clever. And I was a fan of how they decided to you know, have that line in the movie. BB-8 says it. Here I have the opening sequence, very intense. The intense tone is set immediately, right from the opening sequence of this movie, where the First Order is coming in. It takes place, I would imagine, a little bit after The Force Awakens. Time-wise, maybe an hour or so. The First Order finds their resistance base, wherever they were, the planet they were on the end of the Force Awakens, where the resistance, the base is. The First Order's found them, and now they have to escape. And the score, the John Williams score, that's the title is Main Title and Escape. That's the first track of the film. And it's a great sequence. I mean, just from the amazing space battle that we see, and just the tone of it, and just the way it's shot, it is so intense, and John Williams' music is so intense, and it gets you right into it. But I didn't feel like the humor took away from anything, because it was a kind of fun. We see BB-8, we see Poe, we see Hux, and it's just like there's this kind of bit of comedic humor, and all of a sudden we get right out of that, and we get into the dramatic elements of it, we get into the action of the movie, and I thought it was really fantastic. I really love the dark tone. This might be the most intense Star Wars film we've had yet, from beginning to end. I mean, Revenge of the Sith was extremely intense, but that only got intense for like the last hour. This, from beginning to end, the movie's intense, and it doesn't really let you go at all, really. Rose's sister, Paige, she dies fighting for the Resistance, and that sends Rose, you know, it gives her the motivation to fight, because she, I don't even know what I write. She's a janitor for the First Order. I scribbled it, but yeah, she's a janitor for the First Order, kind of a janitor kind of thing. She's working behind pipes all day, and her sister dies fighting for the Resistance, and they both have this kind of emblem, this medallion that connects the two, and she still remembers her sister that way. And this is the reason why she's really wanting to join the fight when she gets in with Finn and everything, is because her sister died fighting for the Resistance. And that scene of her death in the beginning of the movie, just with the music and the way it's shot, everything about it is fantastic. When we see the ship just falling into the, or just, you know, falling into the big explosions, and this explosion after explosion, it is incredible, and it looks incredible. Michael Bay should look at this and see, this is how I do explosions in my movie. Make it worth something, make you care about it, because we don't even really know who this character is, but yet we are set up with such great tension, because she has to catch the trigger, and it's falling, and she's kicking, and the music, and it's like amazing, and all of a sudden we think that she drops it, but she doesn't. She catches it, she blows it up, and she pretty much sacrifices herself so everybody else could live. And, you know, there's so much that happens in this movie. Poe Dameron gets demoted by Leia because he wants to destroy this dreadnought, or whatever they call it, this big ship. He finds the opportunity we could really destroy this, you know, and that leads to the losses of all these people, including Rose's sister, I believe. And, yeah, so Leia's just like, look, you have to think with your head. You can't keep your, you know, you can't just keep thinking on instinct. You have to really think about it. And she demotes him. And then things that happen after this, I know I'm just kind of sticking to the Resistance right now because the movie cuts back and forth between Rey and Luke and the Resistance. And then later on Finn and Rose. There's like 3 things that are happening in this movie at the same time. But with the Resistance afterwards, we get that scene with Snoke and Kylo. We see Snoke use the Force electricity or whatever. Force lightning, he's using it on Kylo Ren. It's just a kind of quick kind of thing because Kylo kind of gets up because Snoke is pretty much just telling him, look, you're like a failure and all this stuff. You're really disappointing me. And all of a sudden Kylo gets up and he shoots him out of the way. And Kylo is so enraged, he says, prepare my ship. And all of a sudden the First Order and Kylo Ren, he's leading the charge on this on the ship, on the Resistance ship, and all of a sudden we get, I believe the ship is called the Raddus, named after a character from Rogue One. You know, all these people die when the ship gets blown up. We get Akbar gets killed, so many other people get killed, and Leia, she gets blown out of the ship, and then they cut away, and it's like, what is happening here? And then you get that scene that's very controversial, but for me, I really liked it. I really enjoyed the scene because of the music. You know, John Williams plays Leia's theme as she finally uses the Force to get herself back into the ship, and when she puts her hand in the window. It's just, I really enjoyed how they did it. Some people might not, but I liked it. I was a fan of it. Now let me talk about Rey and Luke at this point, because now I'm getting a little too far into the film without even mentioning that. And at first, we see that scene at the end of The Force Awakens. Rey's going up to Luke. She hands him the lightsaber. What does he do with it? He throws it over his shoulder. Pretty much Rian Johnson is telling us anything you think about this movie, like Luke says in the trailer, this is not going to go the way you think. And it's not. Rian Johnson does things in this movie that no one has expected to happen. I highly doubt anyone expected Luke to just throw it over his shoulder, maybe joking about it, but being serious to say, yeah, he's going to just toss it over his shoulder. I don't think anybody thought that. If you did, that's great, but I didn't think about it. I didn't think that was going to happen at all. And all of a sudden when he just throws it over his shoulder, he kind of plays it off for a comedic element, but at the same time, Luke is thinking in his head, I don't want this, and he's kind of going, not completely nuts, but he has those kind of moments of humor that Yoda had when he went to Dagobah. You know, he kind of turned into this crazy old hermit. Kind of like, I don't know. People have used that comparison, but now that I'm thinking about it, because Obi-Wan deserted himself in the desert on Tatooine for all those years watching over Luke, and he didn't really go crazy. So, I don't know. But that moment didn't bother me, and then we lead into seeing Luke's daily lifestyle and what he does, how he fishes, how he gets his drink, and it's all great stuff. We meet the Porgs, and that's all great. And, you know, we see what Luke Skywalker's doing, and he basically says, I came here to die. We learn that he's distanced himself from the Force. He's not in tune with it. Well, he could be in tune with it, but he decides that he doesn't want to be in tune with it. He just wants to go there. He just wants to die. He just wants to live out the end of his life, because what we find out in this movie, why he is really there and what's the real reason, sure, in The Force Awakens we get, yeah, Kylo turned against him, Luke felt responsible, and he ran away from it all. The real truth, that is the truth, but the more to that is Luke really sensed the darkness in Kylo Ren. He really sensed the darkness in him. So one night, during, you know, wherever they are, where he's training them, Luke goes into his little tent or his hut or whatever, Kylo's hut, and he ignites the green lightsaber, because it's still, you know, he still has this green lightsaber, which we don't see any other time in this movie, by the way. I think we should have saw it at the end of the film, but let's talk about that later. He ignites the green lightsaber, and for a split second, he attempts to kill Kylo Ren, but right when he ignites the saber, he says, you know, he thinks in his head, you know what, maybe I don't want to do this. This is really a stupid decision. I regret it immediately, pretty much, and it's too late. Kylo wakes up, and there's no stopping it now. Kylo Ren thinks, you know what, he is trying to kill me. I don't know what's happening right now, but I'm just going to click to the dark side, because I think he was really on both. It was like a scale, you know. He didn't know what side to go on, and once Luke did that, he was just like, you know what, screw this, I'm going over on here to the dark side, which I really enjoyed. I thought that was great. And it's like, if some people say, well, you know, why would he just automatically say, I'm going to kill him for a second? Luke Skywalker had a bit of darkness in him. Last time we saw him in Return of the Jedi, at the end of that film, remember, he fights Vader to the point where he cuts off Vader's hand because he is enraged. Luke Skywalker has that darkness in him, but for the most part he decides not to use it. And he had it for that second, but he was like, you know what, I don't want to kill Kylo, but all of a sudden it was too late. And I really enjoyed that for the character. I think, like I said in my non-spoiler review, Mark Hamill is fantastic in this movie. He is incredible in this film from beginning to end. Each scene, he brings the emotion, he's great in the action stuff, everything about it with him was great. And he decides to train Rey. He's like, look, I'll train you just to show you why this shouldn't be around, pretty much. Just to show you what, you know, why I don't want to use the Force, because, you know, you could go to the dark, you could go to the light, you're not sure. Luke doesn't want to take that chance anymore. He just wants it to all end, pretty much. He says that in the film. It's time for the Jedi to end. And that leads to some great scenes with humor, like in the first lesson he gives her when he tells her to reach out, and he does, and she goes like this, and he has like the leaf or whatever, and he's putting out his hand, and he goes, do you feel that? And she goes, I feel something, and he goes, that's the Force. And she's like really excited about it, and I thought it was hilarious when he says, it must be really strong with you. That line, just to me, was hilarious, because he's just playing with her, you know, he's just doing this, and all of a sudden he just smacks her with it. And then she's like, oh, okay, I thought that was a great moment. You know, this movie has humor sprinkled in through it, and I thought it was great. None of the humor really didn't work for me at all. It all really worked, I thought. But that leads to the Knights of Ren. You know, we haven't seen them, and I don't think they were mentioned in the film, but it was definitely implied. You know, that Kylo Ren is leading the Knights of Ren. He was leading them anyway. We don't know where they are, but in this they established that the dozen of students that Luke was training, Kylo killed half of them and he took half of them, probably to create the Knights of Ren, which we will probably see in Episode 9, I hope, because what are they going to do in Episode 9? They have so many things they could do in this movie, and this is just the first half of the film. All of this has happened. It's crazy. It's very different than The Force Awakens, because in The Force Awakens we're introduced to these characters. We meet Han and Chewie, you know, we're doing the things with the Rathars, we go meet Maz Kanata, we do all this stuff, but nothing really happens in that movie that's like, wow, this is going to change the rest of the film. Only until the end of the movie at Starkiller Base we really get that with the final battle and everything, and the death of Han Solo. But in this, throughout the whole entire film, we get thing after moment after moment after moment that really affects the rest of the movie in a big way, really. I mean, the Resistance is running away from the First Order the whole entire film. Just like in Empire Strikes Back, how Han, Leia, Chewie, and 3PO were on the Falcon, they were escaping the Empire. That's the same thing that's happening here. The whole entire First Order is being hunted down the whole entire time, and they're being tracked. And if they go through light speed, they're going to be tracked through light speed, which I thought was a very interesting aspect in this movie. And that leads Finn and Rose to go on a little adventure, which didn't necessarily work for me completely. I mean, some of it did, but some of it didn't, but it never took me out of the movie. I was just like, okay, this is entertaining, but at the same time, it's like, does it really need to be here? And that's the exact same thing in my non-spoiler review. I said there was two characters that I didn't feel, one of them I liked the performance, but he didn't really go anywhere. I was talking about Benicio del Toro's character, DJ, who is unnamed in the film. We only know his name is DJ from the Funko Pop and some action figures that are released of him. His name is not said in this movie, as far as I'm aware anyway, and his character just kind of comes in to get Finn and Rose from Canto Bight back to Snoke's ship, and he turns on them, and that's it, and he's out of the movie. I didn't hate it, but at the same time, I just feel as though that, I mean, the character was just kind of, you know, thank God they didn't put him in any of the marketing, because if they marketed him heavily, I would have just been like, well, that was just really disappointing, because this character really was just a supporting character. And honestly, I think that people are going really crazy about it, and they're disappointed by him because it is Benicio del Toro, and why not use him in a better way, in a bigger way? But he is just a supporting character. You know, and that's just the actor playing him. I didn't hate it, I just felt as though he was a device to get the characters from one place to the other place. Including Maz Kanata. That's a character that I don't think should have been in this movie at all. because, you know, she's like in this hologram that really is reminiscent to like Star Wars Battlefront 2, and just the dark hue that she's in and everything, and she's fighting and everything, and she's pretty much, find the master code breaker, he could help you do all this. And it's like, okay, whatever. And it turns out DJ wasn't even the master code breaker. Justin Theroux, I believe, is the actor who was the guy with the red palm bloom or whatever they were calling it, that he had pinned on his shirt. He was the right person at the table shooting the dice or whatever. DJ was not, but it turns out DJ had the same skill set. He just wasn't maybe as a trustworthy guy. And just when they get to Canto Bight, I feel like everything at Canto Bight, some of it worked. Like when we first get there for me, and they do the tracking shot through the casino. And then the shot ends with Finn kind of coming into the camera, and he's like smiling, and he's looking around, and then it cuts to him going, oh yes, I love this, or something like that. I really like that. And then they get captured. That all was fine. But once they're in that jail cell, and they meet Benicio del Toro, and there's a bit before that as well when Rose is talking about the fathiers, I believe that's what they're called, the big CG creatures or whatever, and it's pretty much like, oh, they're getting whipped and it's animal abuse and I don't like it and this is not good and everything, it's making her sick. That's a thing that Rian Johnson put in this movie that I feel like didn't have to be in the film. He had so much else going on, so why did he have to add this thing with the fathiers? It led to a fun little sequence where Finn and Rose are escaping and they're riding on one. I mean, it's a fun little sequence, but really it does nothing for the movie at all, for the main plot of the film, and I felt like that could have been cut. And then DJ comes and he gets them to Snoke's ship to do what they needed to do, to stop their tracking, to sneak in. I just feel like that was like a big detour that just didn't need to be there. But like I said, I was entertained by it. I just wasn't taken out. And if that wasn't in the movie, this would have been a 5 out of 5 film for me. And the Maz Kanata not being there, and the DJ character, you know, that's all involved. If none of that was there, this movie would have been easily 5 out of 5, because everything else I absolutely adored in this film. Everything with Luke, everything with Rey, everything Luke is going through, the action. This movie, it never really lets you go. This movie is so intense. And John Williams' music is so intense as well. And this is just the first half of the movie, guys, and I'm 18 minutes into this video. This movie is packed with things that happen. I mean, finally, and just the Force. Rian Johnson expands on the Force in this movie. You know, he expands on the Force because we see Rey is in one space of the galaxy, Kylo's in another space, and for some strange reason, they're able to connect their minds. Like more than just like Luke does with Leia. He closes his eyes as Leia, just like he did in Bespin. You know what I mean? That's how Leia was able to save him at the end of Empire Strikes Back. This takes that to the next level. They're actually talking to each other, having a conversation. Rey's in a sequence where there's rain. Kylo touches his face or something, and there's rain on his glove, which I thought was really interesting. People might not like that, but I felt as though it expanded on the mythology. Who says that that can't happen with the Force? And I was totally into it. I totally bought it. And finally, when Luke you know, there's that whole thing. Rey goes into the cave. She wants to find out who her parents are. Turns out that the cave, she doesn't find out. It's just, we see two walking towards her when there's like 600 Reys or whatever, which I thought was really cool, and she's doing that whole thing, and it's going down the line. I thought that was great. The sound design and everything was great. And all of a sudden we see two people walking, and then it morphs into one person, and then she puts her hand there and it turns into Rey herself, just to pretty much show, look, your parents, it doesn't matter, this is your story, you do what you need to do, your parents are behind you, put your past behind you, move forward. And we do find out who her parents are in this movie. It turns out her parents are just no one who sold her off for drinking money. I thought that was fine. Again, Rian Johnson was just like, you had all those theories, guess what, they didn't matter because this is it. Let me tell the story I'm trying to tell. And when there's that scene when Kylo tells Rey a different version of the story Luke had told her about what had actually happened that night and why Kylo turned, the real reason why Luke's temple and everything got burned down, and how that went. Kylo pretty much changed the story again, because Kylo Ren wasn't entirely sure what was going on inside Luke's head. The only thing he's thinking is, oh, this guy's trying to kill me, screw this, I'm going to the dark side. And that, you know, it's not wrong, he just didn't know what Luke was thinking. He didn't give him enough time for Luke to actually explain himself. So when there's that fight between Rey and Luke, which I thought was great, and greatly choreographed and shot, she's like, did you try to murder him and all this stuff? And Luke's pretty much just like, no, this is not going to go the way you think. I didn't, you know, I in a brief second I thought, you know, I could end it all right now. I could kill Kylo and I could kill the darkness that's surrounding my other pupils. But it turns out he was too late. It turns out, you know, he already ignited the lightsaber, so it was too late, but we already got into that before. So Rey decides, you know what, I saw Kylo's future. It's not, you know, 100% he's on the dark side. He could turn, we could change him. If you're not coming with me, I'm going to go myself. And then she goes. And then we get that great scene where Luke's, he wants to burn down the tree with the Jedi text in it, the original Jedi text. And that's when he goes to burn it down, and we see Yoda in this movie, which I love the usage of Yoda in this film. But the first time we see him, like, from head to toe, he looks a little weird, he looks a little off, but then as the scene kind of progresses and he starts to talk to Luke, and we get, like, Yoda, he's the only one on the screen, and he's coming in, and he's talking, and he's saying things, you know, he looks like Empire Strikes Back Yoda. It's the puppet Yoda, you know. It's the Return of the Jedi Yoda, which I really loved, and their scene was great. Yoda, it was an amazing moment that Yoda came into this movie, not to just have dialogue and show up, but he did something in this movie, which I loved. He was just like, you know, because Luke had reservations about burning down the tree, and Yoda's just like, yeah, I'll do it, and it goes like this, and it's a shot of the island, and there's lightning, all of a sudden, when it comes down on the tree, and then Yoda is just like laughing about it, just like classic Yoda, and I loved that. I loved that scene. It's one of the best scenes in the movie. There's a lot of scenes in this that are some of the best scenes in the movie, and it was great. And now we're getting into the second half of the movie, the end of the second act and the third act of the film, which I completely loved. This is when the movie jumped into like high gear. Even if it wasn't in high gear already, this is when the film goes from 100 miles per hour to like 3,000 miles per hour. John Williams' music was great in the first half of the film, but it seems like at this point when we get onto Snoke's ship, the music begins to get incredible. And the music, like I said, it was really good in the first half, but this is where it really kicks in, and the movie really kicks into high gear. Because now we get Finn and Rose, they're on Snoke's ship, Rey pretty much gets onto Snoke's ship, and this is where some great stuff happens. This is where some incredible stuff happens. Kylo and Rey, they're in the elevator, they're going up to the Snoke's throne room, and Rey's like, look, you could turn, and Kylo's pretty much like, yeah, I'm not going to listen to you right now, we're just going to get this done. And we see Snoke, there's that great scene, which is very reminiscent to Return of the Jedi, how Snoke is like, yeah, look at your friends, they're going to die, they're escaping on these pods to Crate, you know, so they're unnoticed, but we know because DJ ratted them out because there's they were caught, you know, Finn and Rose and everything, they were caught, and DJ was caught too, and he's like, I struck a deal with them and everything, kind of like a little bit of Lando Calrissian, but not as much. I mean, Lando's obviously a better character than this, but, so that's how the First Order knew that the rest of Resistance was going down to Crate. It was because of DJ's betrayal. And all of this is playing at once. And finally, when Snoke has Rey on her knees in front of Kylo, and Snoke is like, kill your enemy, kill her to prove yourself, and all of a sudden, Kylo uses the Force, and it's such an awesome way it's shot and done, because Snoke has Luke's lightsaber, or Rey's lightsaber now, or whatever, you could even say Anakin's lightsaber, on the seat next to him. And as he's turning his lightsaber, the other lightsaber's turning as well with the Force, and the one he decides to ignite is the blue one, killing Snoke. The thing goes through Snoke and cuts him in half. And once that happens, John Williams' music is incredible. It's like, and then it's like, dun, 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 like it's so intense. And then immediately after that, the Praetorian Guards come in, and there's that incredible sequence that Rey and Kylo team up for one scene in this movie. I was going crazy watching this in the theater. It was incredible. It was incredibly choreographed. This movie has some of the best moments in Star Wars history. I loved this scene, and I loved everything that comes after it, because when when Finn and Rose are captured and they're walking in to all the stormtroopers right before they're on the ground about to be executed, we hear that music that was in The Force Awakens as they're walking, but it's amped up and it's more dramatic, and it's like da-na-na, da-na-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na-na, and something like that along the lines of that. when Finn is walking with Poe in The Force Awakens in the beginning of the movie, and he says, "Turn here," and that's when he takes the mask off and he says, "I need a pilot." That whole thing, that music that plays at the beginning of that scene, it's incredible, and it's in this scene and it's great. And that leads oh man, and that's also leading back to what's happening on the Radis. I believe that's still, no, that ship was destroyed. The ship that Laura Dern is on, she says, "Look, someone has to pilot the ship while everybody else leaves." She pretty much sacrifices herself. So many self-sacrifices happen in this movie, and they're all warranted. They're all deserved. And she turns the ship, and she goes into light speed into Snoke's ship, and it's incredible because all these things are intertwined at once, and it's so intense. And all of a sudden, all the sound goes out, and she goes into light speed into Snoke's ship, and they show it in several different angles, and it's incredible. It's the most awesome thing you'll ever see in your life. And that leads to the incredible fight between Finn and Phasma. Phasma finally dies. We see her eye, yada, yada, yada. And there's also things with BB-8 that happen in this movie. There's a thing that happens in Canto Bight when he shoots coins out of himself to take down some of the bad guys. And in this, he's in the walker. You know, it is what it is. I didn't love those things with BB-8, but I didn't hate them either. I mean, like I said, it is what it is. I mean, in the scene in Canto Bight, when he's shooting the coins out, that makes sense because there's that scene before that when there's that little short guy, he's putting coins in him because he thinks he's like a lottery machine or something, a slot machine. So it made sense. But now we're getting to the end of the film. Now we're getting to the final climax of the movie at Crate, the Battle of Crate. It's very reminiscent of the Battle of Hoth. They have this like mini Death Star tank or whatever that could blow the door down. It blows the door down. They're unsuccessful of destroying it. All hope is pretty much lost. Finn almost killed himself. He almost, again, committed a self-sacrifice in this movie, but he didn't because he was saved by Rose, and she's like, "Oh, I saved you, silly. We're fighting for the things we love," and she kisses him, whatever, it's fine, I don't care. Everything else in this movie kind of overshadows that. I mean, we kind of, you know, because she's such a fan of him from the beginning, she says, "Oh, you're the Finn," and "You're the Finn," and he goes, "The Finn." You know, I thought that was kind of funny as well. But finally, at the end of this film, how many minutes am I in? 28 minutes. This is crazy. This movie is so intense, and so many things happen in this film. It's crazy. So many spoilerific things happen in this movie. It's crazy. And after the Battle of Crate, and I guess, you know, after everything that happened up in Snoke's ship, Rey escapes, you know, because Kylo is now the leader of the First Order. He wants Rey to join him, but she's obviously not going to do that. She is the hero of this trilogy, and I don't think she was ever going to turn. I don't think that was ever an idea for Lucasfilm to change her. At least I don't think so anyway. So she rendezvous with Chewie and R2 back on the Falcon, and there's a couple Porgs on the Falcon, and that leads to that Battle of Crate. You know, she leads the TIE fighters away. Chewie is the pilot of the Falcon, which is great, and Rey's down on the gunner post where Finn was in The Force Awakens. I really like that. And this movie ends, the final really bit of the film is Luke coming in, and everybody's thinking, "Oh, Luke Skywalker's here, this is great, he's come to save the day," but his hair's a bit different. Why is his hair a bit different? He's come to face Kylo, and there's that beautiful scene between him and Carrie Fisher. Mark Hamill, this is something that Mark Hamill could look back on. He kisses her on the forehead. It's a beautiful scene. It is a beautiful scene. The last scene that they have together, it is incredible. I loved it. It was like so satisfying. And he go and we get, you know, you know, Luke and Leia's theme. And after that, after he puts the dice in her hand, the dice that he took that was in the Falcon, that was Han's dice pretty much, he gives it back to Leia. And originally when I hear, after Luke and Leia's theme, he gets up, he kisses her on the forehead, we hear the love theme between Han and Leia. I was wondering why is this playing here, but then I realized it's playing because he gave her the dice. And that reminds her of Han. So that was like a beautiful thing. And then Luke leaves. There's that... I loved it when he walks past 3PO and he's like, "Master Luke." 3PO says that like he always used to call him, and Luke just like winks at him and he walks out. And the music, one of John Williams' best parts in the whole entire movie, it's like dun 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 dun, as Luke is just walking out of the door that was just blown up, you know, and he's walking out, and there's all these TIE fighters, or not TIE fighters, but walkers and everything, just about to shoot him. And it's just one man walking out, and it is the most epic thing you'll ever see in your entire life, the way it's shot. And Kylo's just like, you know what? Open fire. Fire every gun we have on this man. Doesn't do anything to him. He goes like this. Kylo goes down, and they have that confrontation. The great dialogue before they actually start to not really fight, but before Kylo attempts to kill him. He's like, "Oh, you've come to save my soul," and Luke's just like, "No, he's come to face him." Really, what Luke did, he went to buy the Resistance time to get out of Crate, because there was no other way that they were leaving surviving. So Luke pretty much was just like, you know what? I'm going to tune into the Force again, and I'm going to use all my power to save everyone else. And this is going to be, again, a self-sacrifice. I don't know if anyone noticed that Luke actually wasn't there. Well, I mean, obviously they noticed, but during the scene, we see Kylo, he's making like the footprints. We see the red underneath the salt. But Luke wasn't making any footprints, and I noticed this the first time, and it was incredible. It's an awesome thing that Ryan Johnson directed the hell out of this movie, and he did a fantastic job with this whole movie, but the sequence itself, just this last bit of the film, it's incredible, and it's so powerful, and I loved every second of it. And finally, it's like, if you strike me down in anger, and I'll always be with you, just like your father. And that's when Kylo goes up and he wants to slice him in half, and it turns out he didn't slice him in half because Luke is still on Octu, and he's using the Force. He's Force projecting himself, something we've never seen in Star Wars, but it felt so right for the scene. In my opinion, it felt so right because there's nothing Kylo could do, and Luke's just like, see you around, kid, and he disappears, and Kylo feels defeated. There's nothing he can do. And in this time, Rey lifts the rocks, the Resistance gets out in the Falcon, and Luke is just sitting there on his rock. He's dying. He used all of his energy. He's just sitting there. It starts out he's in pain, but all of a sudden he just sits there and he's in peace, and he looks and he sees the twin suns. It's such a beautiful, poetic moment how Luke's journey starts with the twin suns and it ends with the twin suns, with that beautiful binary sunset music that plays at the scene, and Luke just disappears into the Force. It is the most beautiful way this character could have died. It is not like how they killed Han Solo when Kylo Ren stabs him. It's a brutal death. He just stabs him, and Han falls off the thing. This is different. Luke went out on his own terms. It was a peaceful death. It was a beautiful death, and I was happy with the way he did it. It was so satisfying how Ryan Johnson decided to do it. People might disagree, but for me, it was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen all year in any film. It is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. A beautiful death. It was crazy. I was so into it. And then that's pretty much how the film ends. Everybody's on the Falcon. Everybody's, getting to know each other again. They're all reuniting. Finn opens the thing to get a jacket, opens the drawer to get her jacket or something. And we see the books, the Jedi texts. So it turns out that Rey took the books. That's why Yoda burned the tree down, because he knew that she took the books. So why not? Let's just burn this tree. It was great. It all just was great, and it all worked beautifully and perfectly. And it's like, what do we do now? Luke is gone. He went out with peace and purpose. Leia said, yes, I felt it. And Rey's like, what do we do? And she has everything. Leia's like, we have everything we need pretty much to continue. Because now Rey is going to lead the new Jedi, because she has all the tech. She has half of a lightsaber. I don't know what is going to happen there. What if she finally puts a kyber crystal into her staff or something? What if it could do that, and she has a double-sided thing? We'll see. I don't know what's going to happen. But that's that. And then we see the kid on Canto Bight. We cut back to Canto Bight, the final bit of the movie. And we see the little emblem that Rose gave the kid that says rebellion or whatever, it had a rebellion symbol on it, whatever the case was. He has that on his finger. And we see that when he gets his broom, he uses the Force to get the broom, and he brooms a bit, and he looks up into the sky, and what we see is the Falcon going into hyperspace, because they're not being tracked anymore, so they could escape. And there we go. Everybody's together. The kid is looking up. He has the Force. The movie ends. There are Force users out there. Rey is going to be the new master. Kylo is the leader of the First Order. Luke is probably going to appear again as a Force ghost. I hope in Episode 9 We're going to see Yoda again. I want to see Ewan McGregor in this as Obi-Wan. I want to see Anakin in this. I want to see Hayden Christensen back as Anakin, all as Force ghosts, because now Luke is a Force ghost that leads everyone else to be there. And there's a, before I end this video, there's like a mention to Qui-Gon Jinn. If anybody else noticed this, at least I think it's a mention to Qui-Gon. When it's the scene when Luke is telling Rey, he's going, you know, the Jedi, look at their deeds. You know, there was one Jedi that was the reason of the training of Darth Vader. It wasn't Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan's not the one that wanted to train Anakin. It was Qui-Gon. It wasn't Yoda. It was Qui-Gon. I think that was a direct reference to Qui-Gon. So that was nice how it all just continues and wraps together so nicely. I really enjoyed it. But guys, there's my spoiler thoughts on The Last Jedi. John Williams' music is great. But like I said, I do like the score better in The Force Awakens just because we get more themes introduced. Like this, we get a lot of motifs, like a lot of great cues. But in that, we get Rey's theme, March of the Resistance, Kylo Ren's theme, Poe Dameron's theme, all these great new themes that are introduced into that movie. This, we only get one new theme, and that's Rose's theme. And I got my piano right here. I could actually play it now. This is what it sounds like. So, it's a good theme. It's a nice little theme. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not as good as Rey's theme or any of the other themes, to be quite honest with you. But the music is great. Because when John Williams wants to shine in this movie, he shines. This is almost a 40-minute video. I can't believe I talked so long, but this movie has so much in it. I mean, there's so much that happens in this film to talk about. It is incredible. Guys, have you seen The Last Jedi? I kind of hope you've seen it, because you just watched me give away every damn thing about it. Comment your thoughts. There's spoilerific thoughts. Let's have a conversation in the comment section. Do you agree with me about some of these things? Or do you disagree? What do you think in the comments? Guys, you could also subscribe to this channel. This coming Tuesday, I'll be doing my Blu-ray unboxing for Dunkirk, which I'll be giving you a chance to win the digital code. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. The links to those are in the description of this video. And guys, that's about it. Thank you very much for watching my spoiler-filled review for Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Over and out.